Alright folks, I have a very interesting situation here. You see I've got an xy axis and I have a line. I have a point on the line which is -2, 7. I've got another point here and I've got my rise and my run. So I need to write the equation for this line. Let's take a look. I've got my rise over run, so I know that my m, my slope, is 3 over 4. And at this point, with our handy-dandy slope-intercept form, we need to find b, the y-intercept. But when I come over here, I see that my y-intercept is not really in a very good space. I could guess at this, and I could say that this is 8.5, but that's really just a guess. So what can we do to figure out the equation for this line? What I need to do is we need to learn something besides slope-intercept form, because there's going to be times where it's not going to be very easy for you to find the y-intercept. So in that case, instead of using slope-intercept form, where we have the y-intercept and the rate of change, we're going to learn today how to use point-slope form. Point-slope is y, our dependent variable, minus y1 equals m, our rate of change, times x, our independent variable, minus x1. M, as you already know, is our rate of change. And this right here, we've got x1 and y1. x1 comma y1 is any point that's on the line. So let's use this form to figure out the equation for this line. So I'm going to write y minus y1 equals m times, and in parentheses, x minus x1. Now the negatives are very important. These are part of the formula and we have to pay attention to those. So I'm going to insert my slope, which is 3 over 4, times x. And let's use this point here, -2, 7. Now my x value is -2. I need to put in a negative symbol from the formula and a -2, which is my point, equals y minus 7. Now I can simplify this down just a little bit and keep it in slope-intercept form. I'm sorry, point-slope form. Y minus 7 equals 3 over 4 times x, and I've got a negative and a negative, make a positive, 2. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is the equation for this line in point-slope form. So you all need to be able to insert the slope and any point into this form to get a simplified equation. But what's more, we can actually take this further. We can take this form and we can simplify this down into slope-intercept form. Now watch how I do this. I'm going to move this down just a little bit. We're going to distribute the 3/4 to both terms inside the parentheses. Y minus 7 equals 3 over 4 times x is 3/4 x, plus 3 times 2 is 6 over 4. Now I've got a -7 here that I need to get rid of because in order to get slope-intercept form, I need y all by itself. So I need to add 7 to both sides. That equals 0. Y equals 3/4 x. Now, let's remember something about fractions. This is 7 ones, but my fraction is in fourths. So in order to make this an equivalent fraction, I need to take this denominator, multiply by 4. If I multiply the denominator by 4, I need to multiply the numerator by 4. This equals 28 fourths. Now I can add them together. 28 plus 6 is 34 fourths. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is y equals m times x plus b. Now there's one more form that I need us to know. So far, we've learned and we've known slope-intercept form for quite a while. Today we're going to learn point-slope form, which is fairly straightforward. We need to know m and any point that's on the line, x1 and y1. But this last form is called standard form. ax plus by equals c. And what's interesting about this is the x and the y are on the same side of the equation, on the left side. There's a couple of things that you need to know about standard form. First, a, this coefficient of x, has to be greater than 0, which means it has to be positive. If a is negative, it's not in standard form. We need to make sure that this coefficient, a, is positive. Secondly, a and b, the coefficients of x and y, a and b, both have to be not equal to 0. If they're equal to 0, then it messes us up and it's not really standard form. And lastly, the coefficients a, b, and c all need to be integers. That's whole numbers, positive and negative whole numbers. No decimals, no fractions. So let's change this slope-intercept form into standard form. Remember, folks, what I need to get is I need to get ax plus by equal to c. So what I need to do is I need to get this term with x to the other side of the equation. This is positive, so I'm going to subtract 3/4 x, subtract 3/4 x. That gives me negative 3/4 x plus y equals 3/34. Let me move the camera down just a little bit. All right. So, but we've got a couple problems. I've got x and y on both sides, which is fantastic, but my a is not positive. It's negative. We need to fix that. And also, my a and my c are not integers. They're fractions. We need to get rid of these fractions. And we're going to do that both at the same time. Now, just like distributive property, what I'm about to show you is a type of distributive property. I'm going to take the whole equation and I'm going to multiply by a number. That number is going to be negative because a negative and a negative is going to make that positive. And that's going to get rid of my negative a coefficient, so my a is positive. And the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply by the least common multiple. That's something you might have learned in elementary school, maybe even in middle school, least common multiple. What is the denominator that is the smallest number but is common to everything? So this is, and that number is going to be 4. So this number is really 1 over 1, and the least common multiple, 1 times 4 is 4. So this is going to be 4. And basically whatever number is in your denominator, that's what we're going to multiply by, because 4 divided by 4 is 1, and it goes away. 4 divided by 4 is 1, and we're going to get rid of the fraction. So I'm going to multiply. I'm going to distribute negative 4 to the x, to the y, and to this fraction. Negative and a negative make a positive. The 4 cancels the 4, so I have 3x. I'd multiply by negative 4 here, so negative 4 times the one y that's here is going to be negative 4y equals negative and a positive make a negative, and the 4 cancels the 4. So I'm left with 34. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is my standard form equation. Standard, that's not how you spell standard, that's silly. Standard form for this line. And in class today, we're going to be creating point slope form. We're going to be changing it into slope-intercept form and learning something about standard form. Now I've got one more thing to show you regarding standard form. One of the uses for standard form is to help us find our y-intercepts and our x-intercepts. And if you remember, our y-intercept will always be 0 and some number, where our x-intercept is always going to be some number, comma 0. So what I can do is I can take this information and plug it into this equation and solve for my intercept. So if x equals 0, so I can 3 times 0 is going to be 0 minus 4y equals negative 34. So this goes away, and now I'm down to a one-step equation. Negative 4y equals 34. In order to solve for y, I need to do the opposite, which is divide by negative 4, divide by negative 4. This cancels. I'm left with y equals, negative and a negative make a positive, 34/4. 34/4. And that should ring a bell because that was our point slope form. That's our y-intercept. That's b. Let me show you one last thing and we'll be done with this particular video, and we can move on to some practice problems together. Now, to find the x-intercept, I can do the same thing, but instead of making the x 0, I'm going to make the y value 0. So negative 3 times x minus 4 times 0 equals negative 34. And this equals 0, so I'm left with negative 3x equals negative 34. And then this is a one-step equation. The negative 3 is being multiplied to the x. So in order to isolate the x and get it by itself, I need to do the opposite, which is divide by 3. Divide by 3. That equals 1. Negative 3 divided by negative 3 is 1. X equals negative divided by negative is a positive 34 thirds. So my y-intercept, my x-intercept is 34 thirds.